think you should too. It's only now, when our governments around Australia have spent billions of dollars to save us from global warming, and when our power bills are going through the roof, that the man who's arguably Australia's top climate scientist says, well, actually, the climate predictions aren't clear. We're not actually sure what's going to happen to us. Now, this guy, Dr. Andy Pitman, did blow the whistle on alarmists once before to Sydney University students in 2019. I showed you at the time.
This may not be what you expect to hear, but as far as the climate scientists know, there is no link between climate change and drought. Now, that may not be what you read in the newspapers and sometimes hear commented, but there is no reason a priori why climate change should make the landscape more arid.
No link between climate change and drought. Well, that caused a stink after I reported that. Many climate scientists are too scared to keep up their funding. And Labor state governments already built desalination plants because they'd trusted people like global warming guru Tim Flannery, who'd claimed the opposite.
Even the rain that falls isn't actually going to fill our dams and our river system.
So Andy Pitman rushed out a clarification. He'd meant to say there was no direct link to global warming, which might still, he said, give rain, more rain in some areas, less in others, whatever. But anyway, now Pitman, who's head of the ARC Centre for Excellence with Climate Extremes and a top climate authority in the Academy of Science, has again voiced doubts in a report and a talk to fellow warmists. Now, Pitman wants a new national institute to oversee how we react to global warming because he said there's gaps in what scientists actually know about how it is affecting Australia. Those gaps turn out to be chasms. For instance, Pitman says our climate models are so bad that they cannot tell us whether we'll actually get more extreme weather events, more catastrophic flooding. As he put it in his report, co-written with other scientists, global climate models cannot tell us if such events will become more common in the future. I'm thinking, hello, haven't warmers been telling us for decades that all hell is going to break loose if we don't cut our emissions? And doesn't everyone, however unqualified, now repeat this claim as settled science?
As the climate continues to change, our communities are increasingly being devastated by drought, fires and floods.
But Professor Pitman hasn't finished. He says we also don't know when and where the climate will suddenly tip into some catastrophe.
We know that tipping points exist, and we know that Australia is at risk of abrupt changes in weather and climate. It matters a great deal if we could say things about when and where those things might be realised. At the moment, we really can't.
Well, and nor do we know if we'll get less water or actually more in our most important agricultural area.
We actually don't know whether climate change will increase or decrease the flows of water through systems like the Murray-Darling.
That's actually quite critical, that point, because if more global warming will give us more water to grow food in our most productive area, why try to stop it? And why did the CSIRO, our top science body, predict so confidently that we'd in fact get a drastic drop in water in the Murray-Darling? But this uncertainty goes right across the board. You know, if we don't know how global warming, well, according to Pitman, we don't know how global warming is going to affect Australia, good or bad, it seems. So why are our governments spending billions on just guesses?
Investing heavily in things that won't happen, but not investing in things that will happen.
Now, let me be clear. Andy Pitman does think global warming is a big problem, okay? He wants more money for a new institute, with the money for his old centre about to end. But I am puzzled, because I've written for decades how so many global warming scares have proved false. Like, you know the ones. You know, we're running out of water, or we're running out of food, or out of polar bears. We're going to get more cyclones. That was an Al Gore one. Instead, of course, I've given you so many examples of the opposite. So I knew that the climate models must be flawed. But you got experts and you got the ABC telling me to shut up and trust the science. And now look, we learned that what was supposedly certain about global warming isn't at all. So I've got to ask, are our politicians spending these billions of dollars on global warming politics. So they're just flying blind? Have we been conned? Joining me is journalist and author Tony Thomas, who broke this story for Quadrant Online. You can read his account there, very detailed. Tony, thanks for your time and thanks for the story. These are stunning revelations. Why are they important?
Well, Australian climate science has been treated with enormous respect for 20 years, and now this top climate guy, Pitman, is saying it's actually a sort of feeble and senile science built on what he says are crumbling foundations. It's uncoordinated, there's critical gaps. It pretends too much certainty. It can't answer any of the big questions. It's even blundering us into policies that could increase emissions, not reduce them.
Look, this is just amazing, because let's not forget that in the meantime, we've got governments totally reordering the way we power our economy, committing tens and tens of billions of dollars to this transition without even knowing whether it will work, on the basis of science that we're told now is incomplete, blundering, and built on shifting sands or whatever. What to you is the most important admission of the ones that Pitman gives here?
He says quite bluntly that the overseas models are inappropriate for Australia, and the local spin-offs from these models don't work either. And he says that to rely on these models risks fundamentally wrong projections of future climate. Well, the models are all we've got. So where are we? We're just flying blind. It'll take another 10 years, he says, before we get decent answers to the sort of questions that are on top of his mind right now.
So this is amazing, right? Pitman, one of the most important things that I think he says is that we don't even know if there's going to be more or less water in the Murray-Darling. Now, I think that's absolutely crucial. Less water would be terrible. More would actually be fantastic. And if we're going to get more, why would you want to stop global warming if it means more water in the Murray-Darling for growing more food? So why are we, rushing to try to change things when we don't know if it's good or bad?
Well, there's a whole catalogue in those documents of what they don't know, and they don't know if natural disasters will be more common or less common under global warming. Maybe global warming will bring us milder conditions and fewer disasters. That's what he's saying. Another thing, more vegetation in Australia might well decrease emissions, but Pitman says it might even increase emissions. So if that's going to increase emissions, why are we planting all these billions of trees and offsets and things like that? And what's more, they know nothing about, even after decades of research, as to whether we're going to get El Ninos or La Ninas that make our weather dry or wet for a couple of years. They're the most crucial part of the climate. And so he's just got no idea whether we'll get fewer or more of either of these huge events. And as you say, he doesn't know if we'll get more or less rain.
Now, I don't want to have a go at Andy Pitman, because I think he's, while he might have been a bit alarmist in the past, I've got to say he's at least honest enough to admit to to be open about the doubts. It's the other scientists that I really worry about, Tony Thomas. Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Unbelievable. What are our politicians using to justify these massive changes and these massive taxes and massive spending to our economy, including destroying a power system that already works and replacing the one that doesn't? I don't get it. Anyway, but to this